Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and I'm going to be joined in a second by Michael Katz. I do want to let you know that the Grove Collective right now is doing their March to Victory campaign. And what this is a March Madness style tournament to where you can donate to Ole Miss's NIL campaign and just work your region up through the bracket, just like March Madness would. Go to thegrovecollective.com/March to Victory. Again, that's thegrovecollective.com/March to Victory. I am joined by Michael Katz from the Tupelo Daily Journal, and he had the benefit of sitting in there for it was like 12 minutes, Michael. Good grief. Did you at least take a water?
I basically did a lap, and then I stood there for a few minutes, and then it was time to go. But you know what? I am grateful for all the opportunities. I'll never turn any of those sorts of things down. But it was a quick glimpse. But it's just crazy that we're already back out there. I swear the Peach Bowl was just like a couple of weeks ago, and now here we are with 20 whatever new guys on this team and all this stuff.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, y'all's viewing period was basically the individual period, pre-practice individual period. So basically, you could get an idea of players that were with a position group. You could get an idea of what players looked like with pads on, and you couldn't get much more of a look than that. Is that about right, Michael?
Yeah, it's big eyeball test season. It's looking to see, like you said, how guys look in pads, who's gotten bigger, who's leaned up, how guys are moving around, that kind of stuff. And it's a lot of throwing passes against air and a lot of pretty deep balls with no defenders. But again, that's just kind of the nature of the game. But it's hard to really tell much schematically from what we see, but you definitely see the players.
The one thing that happens, you could tell some players that didn't play, and Lane Kiffin actually mentioned some injuries, which is kind of a new territory type thing for him. What's kind of the pre-spring injury update?
Yeah, so one of the guys who was not out there and Lane mentioned was Juice Wells. Obviously, he was one of the big pickups in the portal from South Carolina. Not sure what the injury was. Doesn't sound like it's anything that's going to be concerning. The other one, I believe, was Diego Pounds, transfer offensive lineman from North Carolina. Those were the two that he mentioned. The other one that does seem a little bit more serious, he did confirm that Logan Diggs, LSU running back transfer, did have knee surgery, and that it sounds like he's going to be out for a while. They don't necessarily know the timeline, but they hope that he'll be able to contribute at some point during the season. So Lane was also asked, if running back would be a position they'd look at in the portal, and he did admit that would be something that they could possibly look at. So, but I think defensively, a lot of the guys were there. We saw Princely Umanmielen, we saw Walter Nolen, we saw Chris Paul, we saw most of those guys. It sounds like offense is there's some nagging stuff that they're just kind of getting healed up with.
Yeah, and one thing that you notice, and you've seen pictures on the line on D linemen going through there when everybody was filming, Walter Nolen and Princely Umanmielen, but Suntarine Perkins working out with the defensive line, it honestly doesn't look like he's put on that much weight.
Yeah, no, that was one of the, I was looking over because I was looking for Walter Nolen because you obviously got to go find him, and I saw number 4 in that general vicinity. I thought that was pretty interesting that he was working out with Umanmielen and those guys. He doesn't look much bigger, but again, we see him from a distance. I think Pete Golding, man, I think he's got a plan for that dude, and I think I think Pete Golding is going to get the benefit of the doubt on how to make that thing work. Wherever they put him, I think he's going to be really successful. But I think when you look at what they need, I think, maybe having him as an edge defender is maybe where they feel he can be, the most productive, at least at this point in his career. But he's such a good athlete that he'll figure out wherever they want him.
You got to put eyes on Jaxson Dart. How did he look throwing the football? How did he look injury wise? Did you tell? Is there anything nagging going on, or is he almost at the end of this?
Yeah, so I know when we talked to Lane, I guess right before they went on break, he said that Jaxson was limited because he was coming off of that surgery. Again, we didn't see them run around and all that kind of stuff, but he was moving around, he was throwing, he was taking his drops. Is he 100%? I don't know, but I think he's in, I know it's only been, 2 weeks since we last talked to them or whatever, but it seems like he's in a way better place. So it sounds like he's healing up pretty well.
Any other returning players that just kind of made an impression, just popped out to you as like, hey, okay, there's Austin Simmons at football practice?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one I will never understand, how you can balance the sort of lifestyle that Austin Simmons is right now, with waking up and going to practice and then, traveling with the team to Pearl to play in a midweek game tomorrow. And, it's incredible. I give him a lot of credit. It's pretty incredible for someone to be able to do that. But, he's always, look, he throws 94, 95 miles an hour. You can tell the football comes off his hand pretty spectacularly. It's a tight spiral, that sort of stuff. Walker Howard, of course, was out there, and you would expect him maybe to be the number 2 if you're looking at that, but I feel like that's going to be an open thing too. I guess if we're looking at guys, returners, Trey Harris is somebody for me that always just is really he's a guy that always passes the eyeball test. He just looks like an SEC wide receiver. He's just so big and strong. Caden Prescorn, he's still huge. He's still a really big, strong dude. Another one who's a transfer that actually kind of caught my eye was the tight end from Virginia Tech, Daquan Hampton. He's a big, strong dude. He was really impressive out there. Daquan Wright. Daquan Wright. Sorry.
Yes.
He and Prescorn, I think, are going to be a pretty devastating duo.
I talked to him about 2 weeks ago on my show, and he came on and I asked him straight up, do you think there's a chance we're going to see 12 personnel this year? I'm a huge 12 personnel person. You can ask all the everydayers on my show. I just randomly start talking about 12 personnel. Do you think there's any chance that we're going to see some 12 personnel from Ole Miss, at least in the red zone?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to get your best players on the field, I just think that with all of the playmakers they have, they already had, and the ones they've brought in, they're so versatile. They just have so many different ways I think they can attack you. And, I think that, like, in a perfect world, he's no longer with the team, but Michael Trigg would have sort of been able to fill that role where you have those 2 guys on the field and you don't know what to do with it because they're just both so big and strong. But obviously that didn't work out. He's at Baylor now. But I think Wright, you bring him in, and again, just the body and the body of work too. He's been productive. Those 2 guys in there, I think it's going to be really, really hard for defenses. And then that with Trey Harris and just all these other big, strong receivers they have, it's going to be problems. I wouldn't be surprised to see them all out there.
All right. And before we get out of here, the running back position, and we talked about, this being something that Ole Miss could hit the transfer portal on. We talked about Logan Diggs' injury. Ulysses Bentley, is he out there practicing? Is Kedrick Reescano out there doing his thing? Because this is a major spring for him. Because if Ole Miss, let's say, does bring in a Henry Parrish, that means that Kedrick Reescano, this is officially the biggest 15 practices of his life.
Yeah, so again, that was one of the first places I went, was to look at the running back room, because obviously we had all heard stuff about Diggs and we wanted to see. I did not see Ulysses Bentley out there today. Again, I think it's always a moving situation with when guys are out there and whatnot. Reescano was out there, and like you said, I agree. I think this is going to be a really big few weeks for him, because he didn't record, I don't think, any stats last year. He was a 4-star kid. If they bring in somebody, it doesn't necessarily say that they don't trust you, but it means that maybe you're not where they need you or want you to be yet. I think how he performs, over the next few weeks could maybe go a long way toward how many guys they bring in, the type of guy they bring in, whatever it looks like. I agree. I think it's going to be big for him because, the 2 guys who you figured would get all the carries and Bentley and Diggs are both out of commission.
And Jaxson Dart, I think, met the media today as well, and he talked about why he came back. Talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, it's again, it seems like it was just yesterday. I think it was on New Year's Day that he posted on Instagram. I think it was right before I watched the Rose Bowl that I was sitting in front of my computer and typing that up. But he was, Jackson's always been a really thoughtful guy, and he gives really, really careful answers and thoughtful answers. And he mentioned that the more he thought about it and talked about it with his teammates, it was almost like there's so much coming back. It was almost too good to pass up. Why would you want to leave something like this right now when you have a chance to do something? You just did something that's never been done, right? You just won 11 games for the first time. I think everybody there sees the chance for more. I think just the more that he thought about and talked about it with people, and the more I think other people started to get on board with coming back. I just think it was too good of an opportunity to pass up. And when he sort of made that decision, to come back, Lane talked about it. Jaxson was as big of a part of the team building this roster as anybody, which is something I thought was really, really interesting. He said basically Dart's fingerprints are all over this roster because he helped recruit so many of these guys. So him coming back was going to be huge, obviously, when you've got a third-year starter in the SEC. That's always big. But I just think his ability to help get this talented group together, it's huge.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Michael Katz from the Daily Journal. Tell everybody what you have going on over in Tupelo.
So I'm currently writing a story about Jaxson Dart's decision to come back and what Lane said about him. Again, I just always think it's fascinating when we get a little bit more of the look at who these guys are. Lane he doesn't necessarily always throw compliments around, but the things that he said about Jaxson today were pretty telling, and just the way that people are connected. And I know you brought up before we started, he's got this magnetic personality. I just think that stuff's really interesting. Other than that, we've got the NCAA women's tournament coming up. Going to have some big stories on that, and then we got some baseball coming up. So it's that time of year where there's a lot of overlap, but I'm happy football's back.
All right. Thank you, Michael. We'll talk to you soon, man.